Hello everyone, welcome to Señor's Spanish course, Lección 13. So today we've got a pretty heavy lesson for you. It's pretty intense, it requires some memorization, but it's really important, and we're going to be talking about verbs with irregular yo forms. So verbs that we know how to conjugate regular verbs. These verbs aren't totally irregular, but the yo forms are different. And it covers some pretty vital verbs that we use a lot in Spanish. So let's get started. Okay, so the yo form. The yo form is unique because the ending is an O instead of the same vowel as the infinitive ending. So for example, with hablar, we have hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, habláis, hablan. So you see how all the endings except for yo have the same as the infinitive, A. So that causes a little bit of trouble. So remember how that, if you go back to the very first lesson, some letters in Spanish change their sound depending on if it's followed by an A, O, a U, or an E or an I. So there's two different categories of vowels, A, O, and U, E and I. So like for example, cantar versus cenar or cenar. So the C changes its sound depending on if it comes before an A, O, U, or an E and I. So this has resulted in some adjustments to the yo form to avoid sound changes, and also it just gives us a much nicer word. So you'll see what I'm talking about here shortly. Now remember, the vowel O is in the same category as an A. Gorila, gambas. So the G doesn't change its sound from A to O. They're in the same category. So that's why most of the irregular yo verbs are ER or IR verbs, because that's the one that causes a problem sometimes. So you'll see what I mean here. Let's look at it. Okay, so here's an example. Hacer or hacer means to do or to make. It's an extremely important verb. We use it all the time. So get used to that verb. Let's take a look. Now, if we conjugated it regularly into the yo form, we would drop off the ER, so we'd have HAC, and then we put on the yo ending, which is O. So we'd have HACO. Well, HACO in Spanish says ACO, which isn't a word. So we would change that C sound. So that's why it causes a problem in the yo forms. So instead what they've done here is changed it to a G. Yo hago. Yo hago. The rest are all the same. Tú haces, ella hace, nosotros hacemos, vosotros hacéis, ellos hacen, and then usted hace, ustedes hacen. The rest are all regular. It's just the yo form gets changed to a G. Yo hago. Here's some more that work that way. I call them yo-go verbs because they didn't go in the yo form. So for example, poner, which means to put. That's another really important verb. It's yo pongo. The rest are the same. Tú pones, él pone, nosotros ponemos. But in the yo form, it's go. Yo pongo. Salir, which is also really common, means to leave. So to go out. You might see, if you're in Mexico or Spain, you might see the word salida, meaning exit. So salir is to leave. And in the yo form, it's yo salgo. Yo salgo. The rest are regular. So it would be tú sales, él sale, nosotros salimos. The rest are the same. It's just the yo form. Valer, to be worth. Yo valgo. That's not a very common word because you don't really say I'm worth very often, but valer is kind of common. So you might say vale la pena, like it's worth the trouble to do something. But in the yo form, it's valgo. You don't usually use it in the yo form, but there it is. Satisfacer, to satisfy. It's yo satisfago. Yo satisfago. Again, the rest are the same. Nosotros satisfacemos. Traer. Traer it means to bring. And in the yo form, it's yo traigo. Yo traigo. And actually, the other two are really similar. We have caer, meaning to fall. It's yo caigo. And raer, meaning to scrape. Yo raigo. So you can see that those are all very similar ending. Really, there's some other ones, and if you see that AER ending, then it's probably going to end in IGO in the yo form. So there's the yo-go verbs, the majority of them. There's not that many, but they're really important, especially poner, salir. Those are the main ones that you use all the time. Okay, so some verbs have a go ending, but they're also irregular in some of the other forms. So let's take a look here. We already know this one, tener, to have. So we've been using tener since probably lesson 1 or 2. And so you know how to conjugate it, but let's take a look at it here. So the yo form, it's a go verb. It's yo tengo. You know that one, right? Yo tengo 20 años. I have 20 years. So let's look at the other forms, though. You probably remember. Hopefully you do. Tú tienes. So there, the normal would be tenes, but it's tienes. There's an E. The E gets changed to an IE. We'll talk about that in a couple lessons here, but for now, just remember it. So we've got él tiene, nosotros tenemos, that one's regular. Vosotros tenéis, that one's regular. Ellos tienen, usted tiene, ustedes tienen. So there's all the forms of tener. It's a yo-go verb, but it also has some changes in all of the other forms except for nosotros and vosotros. And now venir, to come. So that's a really important word too. And you'll see it's exactly like tener. So yo vengo, I come. Tú vienes, él viene. Nosotros venimos. Vosotros venís. Ellos vienen. Usted viene. Ustedes vienen. Works just like tener, where it's a yo-go, and then all the forms except for nosotros and vosotros have a change from an E to an IE. Also here we've got decir. Extremely important verb. It means to say or to tell. Yo digo. So it's yo-go, but instead of being D-E-G-O, it's D-I-G-O. And that I stays the same in all the forms except for nosotros and vosotros. So tú dices, él dice, nosotros decimos, vosotros decís, ellos dicen, usted dice, ustedes dicen. So again, it's a yo-go verb, but then in all of the forms except for nosotros and vosotros, the E in decir changes to an I. So it's not tú dices, it's tú dices. It just sounds better too. Just to point out here, so also keep in mind that the same is true if it's just the same verb with a prefix. For example, mantener, to maintain. It's just the same as tener. It's man plus tener. So it's yo mantengo, él mantiene, nosotros mantenemos. So that works just like tener because it has tener at the end. And also predecir, to predict something, the same. Yo predigo, tú predices, ustedes predicen. So keep an eye out for that because that can really help you. If you see, oh wait, it ends in tener, well then you know it's going to conjugate exactly like tener. Alright, and these ones, I've included them here. So it's verbs ending in G-U-I-R. Drop the U in the yo form. There's not very many here, but for example, distinguir, to distinguish, becomes yo distingo. So we've dropped the U. So the G-U-I-R, we've dropped U-I-R and added an O. So I included it as one of the go verbs here. Extinguir, to extinguish, yo extingo. They're not very common, but there's 2 of them. Okay, let's do some practical with those yo-go verbs. So just conjugate the verb. So what goes here? Poner, yo pongo. We got venir, yo vengo. Nosotros, and then tener. So we're in the nosotros form here. So it's regular. Tenemos, nosotros tenemos. Ellas, we have tener again. So how do you say they have? Ellas tienen. Salir. Remember the yo form of that? salgo. Vosotras, we got distinguir. Well, we're not in the yo form, so it's just regular. Distinguís. Vosotras distinguís. And last one here, ustedes decir. So we're putting that in the ustedes form, which is the same as the ellos form. Dicen. Don't forget that E changes to an I. So there you go. Those verbs, they're really important verbs. We use them all the time, which means, it's kind of good because you just get used to hearing it. And so after a while, the regular form of it sounds weird, like pono, yo pono. Like, that's not a word. And you're like, oh yeah, pongo. So it becomes pretty embedded in your mind because they're so common. Okay, oi verbs. So one where that ends in oy in the yo form. I know we've learned one. Do you remember one that ends in oy in the yo form? Do you remember? It's estar. Yo estoy, remember? So that's one of them. There's only one other one to worry about, and that's the word dar, which means to give. It's a really important word too, so it's used all the time in Spanish. Let's take a look at how it conjugates. Yo doy. So if we did it regularly, we'd drop the AR, put an O to be yo do, which doesn't sound good, so it's just yo doy. Tú das, that's normal. Él da, nosotros damos. Vosotros dais. So it's irregular slightly because the accent mark is dropped. There's no need to accent it because there's just one syllable, so there's no accent there. Ellos dan, usted da, ustedes dan. So it's doy, das, da, damos, dais, dan. So there you go, there's dar. We're going to use that a lot, so get used to that word. Luckily, it's pretty regular. It's just the yo form becomes doy, and then there's no accent in the vosotros. Okay, let's do some práctica with that really quick here. So, what goes there? Yo, hopefully you still remember, it's doy. Yo doy. Tú, what's the two form of star? We learned it about 4 lessons ago. Estás. Don't forget your accents for a star. Nosotros estamos. It's regular. Vosotros dais. No accent. Yo estoy. Nosotros damos. It's regular. Ustedes dan. It's regular as well. Hopefully that was easy. It should be, so if it wasn't, you can watch that again, but there's just 2 verbs that have the OY at the end on yo form. Estar and dar. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, so you might see a 30-second ad. I definitely appreciate your patience here. I mean, most of these videos are about a half hour. It takes me, about, several hours to make even one, so I really do appreciate your patience, and then we will pick up with another verb type in just a moment. Okay, so we've got ser and cir verbs. So verbs ending in CER and CIR. So these are ones that we can't just put an O in there because it's ser, and if we changed it to an O, it would say co. So we need to do something else here to preserve the sounds. So, okay, first we're going to talk about all the verbs that end in vowel, followed by ser or cir, except for hacer, decir, and satisfacer. We already learned those. They're yo-go verbs, so these are the exceptions. All the other verbs that end in vowel, CER, or vowel, CIR. For example, what we're going to do is we're going to drop the ser or cir and add ZCO, SCO, in the O form. For example, conducir. It means to drive. So we've got a vowel, U, followed by ser or cir, in this case cir. So it's UCIR. So we're going to drop the CIR and add ZCO. So how would you say I drive? Conjugate it for me. Well, it'd be yo conduzco. Yo conduzco. So we drop the CER, add ZCO. Yo conduzco. The rest are all normal. Tú conduces, él conduce, nosotros conducimos, vosotros conducís, ellos conducen, usted conduce, ustedes conducen. So the rest are all the same. It's just the yo form. Instead of being yo conduco, which is a weird word, we just put in the ZCO. Yo conduzco. So here's a bunch to learn. Try your best to remember them. Some of them are kind of important. So agradecer, to thank, it's yo agradezco. Yo agradezco. Repeat that just to kind of get used to that sco sound. Yo agradezco. Nacer, to be born. So I am born is yo nazco. Yo nazco. Crecer, to grow. Yo crezco. Yo crezco. Obedecer, to obey. Yo obedezco. Yo obedezco. I obey. Ofrecer, to offer. Yo ofrezco. Yo ofrezco. Merecer, to deserve. So I deserve. Yo merezco. Yo merezco. Permanecer, to remain, to stay. It's yo permanezco. I stay. Yo permanezco. Pertenecer is to belong. So I belong as yo pertenezco. Pertenezco. Aparecer, to appear. Yo aparezco. Yo aparezco. Complacer, to please. Yo complazco. Yo complazco. Yo complazco. And the last one here, conocer, to know a person or a place, to be familiar with. It's yo conozco. Yo conozco. That's the most common one of these you'll be using. Know that one for sure. Yo conozco. Conocer. Alright, let's look at some CIR verbs. Producir, to produce, is yo produzco. Reducir, to reduce. So I reduce is yo reduzco. Lucir, to shine. Yo luzco. Introducir, to insert. It doesn't mean to introduce someone, it's to insert something, like you insert your credit card or something like that. So it's introducir, to insert. Yo introduzco. Traducir, to translate, is yo traduzco. And conducir, we already did that one, it's to drive, it's yo conduzco. So here, I also just including a note here. To introduce someone, that's presentar. It's a regular verb. So I'm just pointing it out because it can be kind of weird if you say, oh, insert me to your friend or something. So you want to use presentar for presenting a friend, introductions. So te presento a Miguel. I present Miguel to you. Meet Miguel. This is Miguel. So it's introducing someone is presentar. Introducir is inserting something. Okay. So now, for verbs that end in a consonant followed by ser or sir, you drop the ser or sir and just add zo. So, for example, vencer, it ends in ser, but there's not a vowel in front of it. It's an N-C-E-R. It means to defeat or conquer. And so how would we say I defeat? Yo venzo. Venzo. So it's not a consonant CER or consonant. It's not a vowel CER or vowel CIR. It's consonant CER. So we just add a Z. Instead of being ZCO, we do just ZO. Yo venzo. The rest are all normal. Tú vences, él vence, nosotros vencemos, vosotros vencéis, ellos vencen, usted vence, ustedes vencen. So those are all the same. Those are normal, regular forms. It's just the yo form. We drop the CER, add a ZO. There's not many verbs like this, but vencer, to defeat, is yo venzo. Ejercer, to exercise, yo ejerzo. Yo ejerzo. So there's not many verbs like that, but if it's a consonant followed by CER or CIR, then you just drop the CER or CIR and add ZO for the yo form. Okay, now you've got ejer and hier verbs. So for that, you drop the GER or GIR and add JO. So it's because of that spelling. If you just added an O, it'd become go. But we want to keep the ho sound, so we use the J. So how do you think you say I protect? Proteger is to protect, so we drop the GER and add JO. Yo protejo. Yo protejo. Everything else is good. Tú proteges, él protege, nosotros protegemos, vosotros protegéis, ellos protegen, usted protege, ustedes protegen. So the only thing here is that in the yo form, we added J instead of a G. Yo protejo. And here's some examples of that. Coger, meaning to catch, like you catch a bus. It's a very versatile word. The yo form is yo cojo. And keep in mind that you're only going to want to use this verb in Spain. It's actually a vulgar word in Latin America, so it's really, really common in Spain. And then you want to just pretty much avoid using it in all of Latin America. But you should know it in case you're in Spain. Coger, yo cojo. Dirigir, to direct. Yo dirijo. Exigir, to demand. Yo exijo. And fingir, pretend. Yo finjo. So there you go. There's some GER, GIR verbs. And the last thing here, some totally randoms. They don't follow any sort of pattern. You just got to memorize them. There's just 3 of them here. So saber, to know. Extremely important word. And it's yo sé. Everything else is the same. Tú sabes, él sabe. Nosotros sabemos. Ustedes saben. But it's the yo form, it's yo sé. So maybe you've heard that before, like, I don't know. Yo no sé. Ver, to see. Again, a really important word. Yo veo. Yo veo. So instead of dropping the ER and adding an O, we just drop the ER and add an EO. So there's an E in there. Just because, again, yo vo is kind of strange. So there's yo veo, just sounds nicer. And notice it's just one syllable. So in the vosotros, there's no accent mark. Vosotros veis. Everything else is regular. So yo veo, tú ves, él ve, nosotros vemos, vosotros veis, no accent mark. Then ellos ven. So everything else is normal. And the last one here, caber, to fit, like to fit into something. Yo quepo. Yo quepo. It's just a totally random one. Okay, some práctica here. So I'll give you the infinitive, and then you guys tell me the meaning and in the yo form. So we've got poner. Do you know what that means? To put. And it's yo pongo. Exigir. Do you remember what that means? To demand something. Yo exijo. I demand it. So yo exijo. Conducir. Remember, like a conductor. To drive. Yo conduzco. Yo conduzco. Saber. Remember that one? To know. And what's the yo form? Yo sé. Remember that accent over the E. Yo sé. Last one, conocer. To know a person or a place. So that's different than to know a fact. Saber is you know a fact. You know something. You know information. Conocer is like I know her. I know this place well. You're familiar with it. Yo conozco. Conozco. We're going to talk more about saber and conocer later, but just know they both mean to know, but saber refers to information. Conocer refers to being familiar with a person or a place. Okay, we've got some more here. Decir, what does it mean? To say. And how do you say I say? Yo digo. Yo digo. Definitely need to know that one. Extinguir sounds just like in English. To extinguish. And in the yo form, it is yo extingo. So all we've done is dropped the U out of there, and then everything else is the same. Dirigir. Remember that one? We just talked about it. To direct. And yo dirijo with a J. Caber. That's another one we just spoke about. It means to fit. It's like no cabe. It doesn't fit. But if you're talking about the yo form, I fit, yo quepo. That's one that a lot of people forget that one, but it is quepo. Ver. Remember that means to see. And yo veo. So we've added an E in the middle there. So it's not yo vo, yo veo. Alright, last page of practica here. Valer, what does it mean? To be worth. Like no vale, it's not worth it. Yo valgo, it's a go verb. Nacer, to be born. And it is yo nazco. Ejercer, to exercise. And we've got yo, that's a tough one. Yo ejerzo. Yo ejerzo. So that's the least common ending we see there, just a ZO. So we dropped the CER, added a ZO. It's not ZCO because it's a consonant CER. Just like look at nacer, vowel CER, so it ends in SCO. Ejercer, we have consonant CER, so it ends in a ZO. Fingir, do you remember what that means? To pretend, to act like. So, yo finjo, with a J, yo finjo. Last one here, dar, probably the most important one that we learned today. To give, and it's yo doy. Alright, well thanks for watching. So hopefully, you learned something here. You might want to rewatch it. It's kind of tough, dense material, but it's really going to expand our vocab, and you're going to see them a lot in the future. So anyway, hasta luego. We'll see you next time.